freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all. So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our daily lives. And if you want to join the conversation, if you want to join the discussion, if you have something you just want to say, if you have a question you want to ask, situation or a story you want to share, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Or give us a Skype call, and we'll be happy to patch you through and have you join the conversation. We're going to be continuing our discussion on narcissism tonight, and with some interesting twists, because of some very interesting developments that occurred over the past couple of days, mainly related to what I thought would be a feature on Vice News Tonight on HBO last Friday evening, day before yesterday. And we'll be talking about that because of its relevance to our character-disturbed age. And we'll also be talking about our president and a few other topics, or a few other narcissism-related topics. So if you have a situation where you've been dealing with somebody who you think is a narcissist or has narcissistic tendencies or qualities in their personality and their character, and you have been victimized in some way by that, or just have some general questions you want to ask about it, or some things you want to share, feel free to give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, a very interesting turn of events. I'm going to give some backdrop to this. You know, lately, the President Trump, has been faulting the media for their dishonesty. And of course, this is like the pot calling the kettle black. But there is truth here, because the sad commentary of our time, is that integrity, that all valuable character quality has become a rare commodity. Folks simply can't be trusted. And it's not just because they're human and make mistakes. Because many times folks will sense themselves on that slippery slope. They know right from the beginning that they are either betraying themselves or betraying someone else. And yet, they dare to go where they know they shouldn't go because we live in an age of unprecedented entitlement. It's all about me, and it's all about what I think I need. And that is the essence. Well, that is just one of the principal elements in narcissism. Just one. This self-centeredness. And this sense of entitlement. That's another. You know, the fact is that narcissism comes in two varieties. One more malignant than the other. One tending to be more malignant than the other. We have the vulnerable type of narcissism. The vanity type, where the person underneath it all doesn't really know their own value, doesn't really have a good sense of self-worth, and is therefore in constant need of validation. Is constantly looking for that approval from others. That's the vulnerable kind of narcissism. Tell me I'm great because I really don't know that I'm worth very much. That's the vulnerable kind of narcissism. We also call it a compensatory type. We also call it the vain type. Vanity is all about affirmation, seeking affirmation. Seeking it because you need it, because underneath it all, you don't really have a good sense of your own worth. And you're constantly needing to prove it. And you're constantly needing the adulation and the validation of others to prove it. Then there's another kind of narcissism. The other kind of narcissism is much more virulent. It's much more malignant. And that's the grandiose type, whereby the person really does think they're all that. Their heads are really inflated. They think they know better. They think they're smarter, greater, more powerful, and especially more worthy than others because of their special status. And they feel entitled to do as they please. And we're seeing more and more of this kind of narcissism. It can get so malignant. It can get so malignant that the person really has no empathy and no real need of others in the kind of healthy need that most of us have for others. It's just it's a testament to our times. It's a testament to our character-impaired age. And it's a sad testament at that. And to illustrate the point about that other type of narcissism, I'll go back to the Greek myth, the wonderful myth from where we get the term narcissism, the tale of Narcissus, the hunter. Most folks are familiar with the basics of the story. The Narcissus comes across his reflection in a clear pool of water, and he falls in love with his own image. But there is another character in the story, a nymph by the name of Echo. And in Greek mythology, there are heroes and then there are superheroes. And the superheroes are those characters that so stand out in their character that all the nymphs want them, desire them, and chase after them. But in the story of Narcissus, the nymph Echo, who relentlessly pursues Narcissus, is not just rebuffed, but basically ignored. Narcissus is unfazed by her relentless pursuit of him because Narcissus has already found all that he needs and all that he values in himself. So he doesn't have the same human need for others as most of us do. And that's how narcissism can get fairly malignant. The lack of empathy, the lack of real need for others. And when it gets extreme, coupled with a sense of entitlement, where the person does so clearly see themselves above others and not needing others. As a matter of fact, to the point where they actually resent and are revulsed by what they see as the weaknesses in others and the vulnerabilities of others, that they feel entitled to prey upon others because they see basically others as weak and unworthy, as inferior. That's the key word, as inferior, and therefore fit to be preyed upon. And we see this in sociopathic or psychopathic characters. The Bernie Madoff types. You don't have to be violent or sadistic or otherwise cruel. You don't have to be criminally antisocial in your conduct. You can look like a fine, upstanding pillar of the community. You can play by all the major rules. But if you're determined to take advantage of others because you think you're more deserving, you're special, and you're entitled, then you'll do the kinds of things that a Bernie Madoff did. And that kind of narcissism is much more malignant. And it's much more commonplace today than it ever has been. We live in a culture that promotes and even rewards narcissism. And so that brings me to where I wanted to go today. And I'll give you some context. Last August, actually, it was the end of July. I can't remember whether it was the last week in July or the first week in August. I think it was in the first week of August. While vacationing in Seattle, I was contacted by the producers of one of the uh, cable news channel programs, and wondered if I'd appear on the program and have something to say about that time candidate, Trump. And if I speak on the topic of character disturbance and narcissism in general. And it turns out that the reason I was contacted was that months earlier I had given an interview that was actually published in 3 different sources. One was The Atlantic. The other was Vanity Fair. I believe Vanity Fair was actually the first article. And then a third was Psychology Today. And in those three different publications, I was egregiously misquoted by reporters that clearly had an agenda. A couple of the things that they reported on were actually true, but the rest was not. And it bespoke the lack of integrity and the lack of honesty, excuse me, that is so rampant today. It's why you can't trust anyone to tell you the truth. And these folks made the usual promises, that they're going to quote accurately. As a matter of fact, when they're writing down on their pads of paper or typing into their computers or whatnot, they're repeating things you say as they're keying them in, so that you are led to believe that they are trying to report accurately exactly what you say. But then when they repeat it back and you hear the error, you hear the bias, and you correct them, you don't hear them repeat that part. So they've already got a notion about what they want to say. And then they make promises like that before they go to press, you will have the opportunity to see what is planned to go to press and make sure that any additions, deletions, corrections, misunderstandings, etc., are addressed before the article goes to press. Well, I can't tell you the number of times that all these same pledges have been made and never kept. You almost have to expect this. Well, you do have to expect it. As a matter of fact, you have to expect it so much that you have to be very careful about what you say. You have to be the one that watches so carefully every word, every letter. You have to be pensive, and they don't want to give you time to think. But you have to be so pensive because you just know there's the high probability that you're going to be misquoted. So anyway, the producers of this program had read certain things in the articles that led them to believe that I would do a real hatchet job, that I would come on the air and I would say things like, this person has a serious mental illness, a disorder that's incurable, and that would pose a danger to the country. And so in discussions with the producer before going on the air, I made the point that that would not be an accurate thing to say. And even if it were an accurate conjecture, there are ethics that apply to persons of my standing in the professional community. of my credentials. There are ethics that apply. And one of those ethical rules is that unless you have personal knowledge, personal data gathering, personal interviewing, personal history taking, relevant collateral information, appropriate testing if necessary, appropriate diagnostic procedures, unless you've done that yourself, not through a third party, unless you've done that yourself with an individual, it's unethical for you to confer a diagnosis. It's just simply unethical. So this TV host wanted me to do so, and of course I wouldn't. So to get around that, and because at the time, there was no other psychologist or psychiatrist or other duly credentialed mental health professional willing to do it, because there was no one willing to do it at the time, the host himself decided that he would just take the official diagnostic criteria out of the official manual, diagnostic manual of the American Psychiatric Association, which is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the American Psychiatric Association, or the DSM, currently in its 5th version or edition, the DSM-5. So he puts these criteria, these behavioral criteria, these observable behavioral criteria on the screen, on the air, before bringing on his panelists, and points out how he believes that candidate Trump meets all these criteria, and therefore implies that the diagnosis is self-evident. And then we go on the air, the panelists do, and some folks give a more sensational version of things, and I try to keep a level head and inform, and really inform with some honesty and integrity. And I just knew after doing so that it would be the last call I ever got from that program. Why? Because they're not interested. They're not interested in a rational, sound, ethical discussion of issues. Almost no one is. Almost everybody has an agenda, and most of the time the agenda is hidden. And that's where we've come. So that's the backdrop to this. And so the production company responsible for HBO's Vice News Tonight, they were familiar with my appearance on that program. They were also familiar with the articles in Vanity Fair and in The Atlantic and in Psychology Today. And so they contacted me and asked if they could come and tape one of my seminars. It took a while for us to get permission for them to do that, because my training seminars are actually the property of the company that sponsors me in doing these things. And it just so happened that one of the workshops was in South San Francisco South. And because of the location there, it also just so happened that that would be our least well-attended workshop. Some of the other locations that were more prime locations had overflow attendees. But the attendance at this one was modest, so it made it seem like a logical choice for the film crews come in and for the interviewer to take some time with me and conduct an interview, which lasted about 50 minutes or so. pretty substantial interview. So the cameras show up. We get the permission arranged through the sponsoring entity. The cameras show up, and what I'm told by the producer is, and this again goes to the whole issue of integrity. What I'm told by the producer is that this is going to be a thoughtful program on narcissism in general, on the topic of narcissism. And they're seeking experts in the field, folks who really know what they're talking about. And they've come across my work. They've come across this information about my appearances, and they want permission to tape. And the other thing that they have heard, and heard correctly, is that I have this video archive that includes videos of President Trump at various venues, engaging in certain behaviors that I do believe illustrate certain points about certain character qualities, especially narcissistic personality qualities. So, upon hearing that, they decided it would be a real good thing to show up because I might actually show one of those things. And they asked me if I plan to do so. And I tell them I don't always do so. As a matter of fact, sometimes I just relate an anecdote based on one of the videos, prepared to show it if not enough folks in the audience remember the event, which illustrates the point. But if folks remember the event all right, then there's no reason to show the video. And I also make the point to the reporter that that I have not just video on Mr. Trump, but videos of all the candidates and others illustrating the kinds of character qualities that I talk about. For example, the kind of lying that some people call pathological lying. Lying when the truth would suffice. Lying for the sake of lying. Senseless lying. Lying when the truth might even do better than the lie with regard to maintaining a favorable impression among others. So I have some videos, not just of Mr. Trump, that are available on the internet of candidates displaying that kind of lying. For example, one of the candidates at the time, Mrs. Clinton, had an incident occur when she was campaigning in Western Virginia. Coal country. Folks very much disadvantaged by what was then the current coal policy. They depended on coal for a living because there wasn't much else in the area. And now that coal mining, now that coal wasn't in as much demand because of all the restrictions on new coal-fired power plants, et cetera, that industry was hurting. And as a result, people's pocketbooks were really ailing in that area, much higher than national unemployment rate, and folks having to settle for work that didn't pay anywhere near as well if they were working. So I have a video there of Ms. Clinton misspeaking, clearly misspeaking. Well, not misspeaking. She meant to say what she said, but it was not favorably received. And then when she was called on it, she denied saying it. And then when she was shown the tape of her saying it, she still denied she was saying it. So she lied even when the truth was fully evident, and even when admitting the truth wouldn't have hurt her. There were so many honest ways. There were so many, I repeat this, so many honest ways to still maintain a favorable image and kind of set the record straight. But some folks, pathological liars that they are, can't do it. They just can't bring themselves to do it. Because as I say in my workshops, it's always about maintaining that position of advantage in any encounter. And they're not going to allow themselves for any moment to be in that one down position with another individual, where they feel they've lost the position of advantage, where they're looking bad, or where they've lost ground in their credibility. They're just not going to do that. Put themselves in a one down position. So I had a tape of that. But I also had, and I also had another tape I had of that same candidate was a tape of an appearance on the Terry Gross show, Fresh Air. A great interview, Ms. Gross is, a great interviewer. Reads up on everything, knows her stuff before she ever interviews anybody, does her homework. And then is so genteel in her manner, but still so honest and direct that you always get a decent interview. And she was trying to throw every softball possible to Miss Clinton, who had, without any question, because the evidence is all out there, without any question, she had come to change her position, or at least she had come to change her stated position, at the very least. Maybe she didn't change the position in her heart, but she, at the very least, she had come to change her stated position on gay marriage, because the evidence was clear. And Terry Gross, bless her, had tape after tape after tape. To verify that Ms. Clinton had indeed changed her position, at least her spoken position, on gay marriage. And not only would Ms. Clinton not acknowledge it, but she dared to accuse this honest investigator, this honest host, a person of integrity. She dared to accuse this person of having a hidden agenda and twisting the facts and distorting the reality to make her look bad. So the person with no integrity accuses the person who has integrity of being the problem. That takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of guts and a lot of determination. A lot of determination to be solidly in the game of impression management, of never giving up the position, of never acknowledging a weakness, of never acknowledging a shortcoming, never acknowledging a mistake. Always trying to manipulate as opposed to be square. And it was a truly, truly embarrassing situation. So Terry is throwing her softballs, softball after softball. Well, could it possibly be that you have actually grown some and come to appreciate more um, some of the legitimate concerns of folks in the gay community, and therefore, even though you were leaning one way at one time in your life, you've grown, changed, been more informed, and you've come to a new, more evolved place. We all grow and learn. That's how it goes. Well, you think she'd take that softball? No. She had to maintain the lie. Because to not maintain the lie, to not maintain the lie, she would have had to have been a different character than she is. You can't turn character on and off. It is what it is. It is what it is. You can't turn it off. It's not like a light switch. And it shows up in a wide variety of situations. And it remains the same over time. It's one of those stable qualities of a human being. Although people do grow in character, the basic integrity or lack of it in their character is pretty much always there. Now, that doesn't mean that people can't develop better character. People do. People learn and grow. At least some people do. Especially if it's within their character to have some humble desire to do so. But it was not in Ms. Clinton's. And the same is true for Mr. Trump. So I've got this archive, and I have these examples to show where they revealed themselves. So to get back to the interview conducted in San Francisco South, the reporter comes in, sets up the camera. I'm under the impression that this program is going to feature a serious and honest discussion on the topic of narcissism itself. It's going to have other experts talking about it, and I'm going to be featured, and my comments are going to be not edited in such a way that will distort the positions that I take and the points that I make. That'll get a fair and honest rendering of the information that I give. I give an interview that lasts 50 minutes. The questions seem like they're genuine. It appears that the folks are really wanting important, helpful, reliable information about a serious issue, and I give it. And then right at the end, I get my first clue that something else is afoot. Because then the person in questioning me, who is being fed questions by the production staff, presses me. So, he says, are you willing to say that President Trump has a narcissistic personality disorder, a serious mental disorder, and is dangerous? Are you willing to say that? And I point out that even if it were true, or even if I suspected that it were true, it would be unethical for me to say that. And I explained that. And I said, besides, because you can't do that kind of thing, the most important thing to do is look at certain behaviors and to draw your own conclusions about the behaviors themselves because they speak for themselves, and make your own judgments about whether or not the person that you're dealing with in some way or the person you're witnessing is a person that can be trusted or is a person of the kind of character that you want in a leadership position. Well, I had hopes that as much of the content as I gave would be used. I also knew, however, that other people were being interviewed. So after the taping, I'm expecting, because this is the way it goes, and also because I've been informed that this is what to expect, I'm expecting that I'll get a note back from the producers, at least an email, maybe a text or a phone call, because they sure didn't hesitate to call frequently when they were trying to put this thing together. And that it would state what they plan to use, how they plan to fashion the program, when it would air, and how I might be able to go ahead to get a hold of a copy, a recording of the episode. Well, I hear nothing for almost 5 days. So I sent a little note myself. And then I'm told that they're still working on this program, that it will be about narcissism in general. It will feature me as well as several other professionals talking about the whole topic. Then I'm told when it's going to air. So my wife and I, we put out the word to some friends about this. And then we learned at the last moment, because the program doesn't air when they said it was going to air, that they have moved it. We didn't get any advance notice about that. And I thought that was kind of funny because generally speaking, if you're going to be on a program and a producer has been nice enough to be with you the whole way, you're going to get some word about it. So then it turns out that the program does air the next night, this past Friday, in fact. And the program is nowhere near what they say. There's about a 20-minute segment, maybe less than that. And it's not on the topic of narcissism at all. It's on the president himself and whether or not a psychologist or a psychiatrist or other duly credentialed mental health professional capable of making a clinical diagnosis under the right circumstances, whether they would be right in asserting that our president has a serious mental illness that poses a danger to the country. And they have one professional who at least discusses the ethics, the controversy around what we call the Goldwater rule. This is a rule, an ethical rule put in place after a number of mental health professionals back in the 60s went on record as saying that Barry Goldwater, the then presidential candidate, was too unstable and too dangerous to be president. Well, I had known of Mr. Goldwater for some time, having lived in Arizona, and he was no doubt fairly rabidly conservative, but a man of incredible integrity was he. Matter of fact, very few folks of that kind of integrity. So whether he agreed with his positions or not, he told us straight, and he was a kind and decent man. And he was not a liar and a manipulator. And he certainly was perhaps the victim of a very well methodically planned and dishonest smear campaign, misrepresentation campaign, scare tactics. And it was effective. And it was effective. There were plenty of other honest ways, honest, decent ways to say, you know what, these views are not the views we want to prevail. We want other opposing views to prevail. So it could have been done honestly. The discussion could have been had honestly. But it wasn't. But in lieu of that time, the Goldwater rule was put into effect by the ethicists at the American Psychiatric Association, followed by the American Psychological Association and other associations for duly credentialed mental health professionals capable, with appropriate training and under the right circumstances, to render a clinical diagnosis. That we don't confer diagnoses on someone that we haven't personally and properly evaluated. We just don't do that. So on this program, they have a woman who discusses the issue, the pros and the cons. And then they have another psychologist who appears to me clearly wants to make a name for himself. He's from Johns Hopkins, so he's got some credentials behind himself, but he goes way out on a limb. And he says, not only does our president have a narcissistic personality disorder, but he's got the most virulent form of it. He's got a malignant kind of narcissism. And therefore, he's dangerous. And that the Goldwater rule, the ethical rules, really need to be changed because he considers it more unethical not to warn somebody of a truly great danger, not to warn the country of a truly great danger. Now, I'm not here to tell you that the narcissism that we see, especially this crude variety of it that we see, that I said earlier there are two kinds of narcissists, the vulnerable or compensatory type and the grandiose type. There are also various other manifestations of it. Sometimes narcissism can be really vile and crude in its expression. In other words, a person can be so brash in their hubris. They can be so offensive in their grandiosity. They can be so unabashed in their sense of superiority that they just naturally revolt some people. You're just taken aback and you think, my goodness, how could anybody be that grandiose? How could anybody think that much of themselves? How could anybody be that so, what appears to be pathologically self-confident? And how could anybody be so brazenly disdainful of others that they believe they're superior to? So there's that kind of expression of narcissism that's just kind of inherently more offensive because of its brazenness, its crudeness. But then there are narcissists who can be quite charming. They have the same pathology, but they know how to manage impressions better. They're not crude. They're not banal. They're not brazen. They're careful. They're more sophisticated. They're more tactful. But that doesn't mean they're not just as narcissistic. And I'm not sure of the two, which is the more dangerous. The one that is so patently offensive that you say, oh my gosh, what am I dealing with here? Or the one who can charm your socks off, but is still so shallow and has such a pathological sense of superiority that they can do great damage. I'm not sure who is any more dangerous. So to make a long story short, who gets on the air and what is the program really about? Well, it's not a meaningful discussion about narcissism per se, but only it's a program on the president and whether or not it's right to break the rule to warn the country about the danger he poses. And the person that's willing to say so gets on the air, and the honest discussion about the issue gets buried on the editing room floor. So if any of you want to see any of the footage that I gave to the crew, and if any of you want to hear any of the comments that I had to make on the topic, what you have to do is either have the HBO app, and you have to go to the archives of the programs and go to the Vice News program for last Friday, which would have been February the 17th, and look in the bonus features. You'd have to do that also on the website. Go to the archives of the program from that date, February 17th, and go to the bonus features, and then you'll see my interview, or at least whatever portions they decided that they would keep. And who knows? I haven't seen it yet. Who knows how it's edited? I haven't seen it or heard it, and I haven't clipped it out or recorded it for myself. Matter of fact, there's a part of me who just didn't want to bother with it because it is just so unnerving to me. It is just so unnerving to me that nobody keeps their word, that we have no integrity left. That people, make promises that they have no intention of keeping, and even if they do, sometimes, they don't seem to have any compunction if they have any about breaking them, if they have some overriding concerns, some concerns that override that. That level of integrity of character is just about dead. It's just about dead. And it's a really, really sad story. So that's the story on the Vice News piece. And that's the story of the first round of my workshop tour in the Bay Area, which included San Francisco South, Berkeley, and Folsom. But what a tour it was, and what a reception. It was a wonderful experience. I wish I could say the same for what I thought was going to be a meaningful program by the producers of Vice News. If any of you are listening to this program tonight, I think you need to be ashamed of yourself, frankly. And, this is not going to dissuade me. The word needs to get out there about a lot of important topics. And I do think I have something of value to say, especially when it comes to character disturbance. That's been my expertise for all these many years. So when opportunities come around for me to get the word out, I will. I will gladly offer my services, but I always do so knowing that there's a high probability that there's a hidden agenda, that there'll be such editing that distorts that I have to be extraordinarily careful in what I say. Very measured, very meticulous, very careful about the words, not the kind of word parsing that manipulators want to do to advance some kind of agenda. But rather, just to be sure that in the editing process, my meaning is so badly butchered that people get completely the wrong idea. So I have to do that. And so I will continue to speak out, but knowing that that probability exists because this is the character disturbed age we live in. There is no more integrity. People cannot be trusted with their word. And they're not really interested in the truth. They're not really interested in the truth. It's a sad day. It's a sad day for all of us. We have a lot of competing interests out there, and they are just that. They are competing interests. But we all are in this together. Everything each one of us does affects the other, whether we like it or not, whether we realize it or not. And we have it within our power to bring ourselves together and to prosper, or to tear each other apart. We have it within our power. The name of this program is Character Matters, because it does. It matters more than anything, and it matters more today perhaps than it's ever mattered before. Life always hangs in the balance. It always does. And it's not that human beings always haven't always been perfect. We never are. We make mistakes. It's just human nature. But we have to have the integrity to honestly reckon with them and to honestly represent ourselves to each other and to be honest about our issues and problems and engage in an honest dialogue if we're going to have a chance of making this work. The stakes are way too high. Perhaps you agree, perhaps you don't. I urge you to keep tuning in. We have much more to talk about these important topics of our time. I thank you for listening. I urge you to go to my blog at drgeorgesimon.com or manipulative-people.com, read the timely articles, get my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, Character Disturbance, the Judas Syndrome, and How Did We End Up Here? And tune in again next week for another edition of Character Matters. Good night.